Good evening, folks. This is Judd, and I am daydreaming about dragons again. And I wanted to talk about the power of naming things. I feel like it's basic, but super, super potent. So it inspired by a tweet I saw on Facebook, in which it's by Beanie Tuesday. I'll see if I can find the link to it. I don't know if I'm going to be able to because it's like a picture of a tweet because of the way Twitter and Facebook don't interact well together anymore. Okay. At Beanie Tuesday writes, the DM says, at a bar, you see a cloaked, hunched-over man. He wears a crown of bone and blade, surrounded by 3 sentient rings of fire. His arm is made of steel. Players, who else is in the tavern? DM, there's a goblin named Sam Smorkle. Players, I want to talk to Sam Smorkle. Okay. What's going on there? Let's just diagnose that a little bit. So it could very well be that the GM wants to play this grim, dark game about, demigods who walk the earth and sit in bars and have crowns of bone and blade and arms of steel, and their friends are sentient fireballs. And the players just want to like goof around with a NPC who forces the GM to make a funny voice. There's that. But the goblin has a name. It's Sam Smorkle, right? Names are powerful. Once you name something, it becomes really, really real. And actions are powerful too. But at the table, naming things is a really, really potent thing. And we were talking about that at a game I was playing this weekend with my friends Rob, Becca, and Tom. And we were talking about, Tom made up a really cool name for he was playing an elf. He was coming up with really cool elven names, and it was cool because it sounded elvish, right? Tom has a really good ear. It sounded like classic Tolkien Kenya elvish, and I say that because I'm sitting here flipping through the languages of Tolkien's Middle-earth, a complete guide to all 14 of the languages Tolkien invented. And I love using this when I've got, especially in the Burning Wheel games, where I've got like old school Tolkien elves, so I can name them things that sound amazing, right? So, if I want to name them, Golden Brown Dagger, I can say, that they're Bran something. I can't control F on this. Usually I use a PDF. If you use the search term Kenya, Quenya, and dictionary or Kenya to English, you'll find some really good PDFs, right? So let's say Baran, and something cool. Imlad, right? The Brown Valley. Baran Imlad. Pretty cool. It's cool. That sounds good. And then, you have the peasants just call it, you mean the Brown Valley, right? But when the elves, they could say the Baran Imlad. And it sounds really good. It sounds really good. And I use that a lot. I use it. I also use Google Translate a lot. I'll find a language, I'll decide that this country, I'm going to use Swahili. And for this other country, I'm going to use Ukrainian, and there we go. And we're off to the races. And that way, different places have a different feel to them, and the names sound different, and it sounds really cool. So check that out. Google Translate is a really good tool for that. And just the power and the potency of naming places, naming swords, naming NPCs. I'm currently reading Verconium by M.H. Harrison, and there's M. Harrison, John Harrison, who writes Verconium, and there's a really cool main character in the first story who has a sword that John Harrison, I'm sorry, who has a sword that doesn't have a name, the Nameless Sword. And of course, once you name it the Nameless Sword, right, suddenly it has a name. So it's good. It's really, really good. It's a lot of fun. I see a lot of influence on it in the current modern OSR stuff. So Vericonium. And I realize we're getting into a lot of inspiration goat material here, but yeah, naming things is potent, and not naming. So suddenly, if everything is named and something is not named, the nameless sword, it becomes potency in its lacking, which is kind of cool. So naming things, using linguistics to name things, and I'm sure there's something out there for making up your own languages, right? There are now books about this, which is super cool, really interesting stuff, so you can look up how people who make up Dothraki and Klingon and all that good stuff and start to make up your own languages, which is beyond my ken, but really interesting. If you have any thoughts on that, if you've made up your own language, please drop me a line. Let me know. My Twitter will be at the end of the show notes. And my email, as always, is judd.karlman@gmail.com. And I'll spell it out one more time at the end after we talk the Inspiration Goat. That is judd.karlman@gmail.com. And we were talking about what else could be going on here, right? With the cloaked figure at the bar and a goblin named Sam Smorkel. And what else could be going on here is the players could be wanting a very different game. Or, they could just be like, you know what, I just want to talk to a goblin with a funny voice. I had a long day at work, and I don't feel like dealing with a demigod who has a crown of bone and blade right now. So interesting. It's also interesting that even within this description, there's almost like two different genres going on here, right? It's fascinating stuff. I will include a link to that, and I'll try to find the original tweet if I can, and I hope I can. And that is about it. The potency of naming things. Hit me up with any thoughts you have about naming things, and good names from your games, bad names, good names that became bad names. Let me know, because I know that there's some folks who sometimes the names can start kind of goofy. Stabby McStabface. But then can you come back from that? I don't know. Can Stabby be a character you take seriously? Let me know. Let me know what's happened at your table, and we'll talk it over. Cool. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Talk to you soon. Let's see what the Inspiration Goat has for us this week. Thank you, Inspiration Goat. We got a couple things from the Inspiration Goat this week. One of them is a novel. I mentioned Adrian Selby and Snakewood, and I started to read another book in that same world. The Snakewood I had problems with. I only gave it, I think, 2 out of 5. But then I read this book, The Winter Road by Adrian Selby. Same world, but you don't have to read Snakewood first to get it. Matter of fact, I would recommend not reading Snakewood and going right to The Winter Road. I gave this book a 4 out of 5. I think I'm going to end up going back and giving it a 5 stars. 5 stars are something that is really rare for me, and I really have to think about it. Usually it's a book I'm going to read twice, or read and then listen to. And The Winter Road was amazing. I mean, I cried on the subway reading this book. So it was really amazing. It's a really cool way to see the kind of herbalism and alchemy in the setting, in the world building that I was talking about a few episodes ago. So definitely check it out. Definitely read it. Definitely let me know. It's cool to read a book by an author, have a problem with it, and then reread another one later and be like, oh, he corrected those problems. That's cool. It's good stuff. So The Winter Road. That's not what, but that was really just a note from the Inspiration Goat. Thank you, Inspiration Goat, for being so thorough. And we're talking a little bit about The Darkest Dungeons today. And it's a really cool video game. You're kind of managing a stable of adventurers to go out into dungeons. And as they go out into dungeons, they contract diseases and mental illness. And you have to either help them or decide that it costs too much to help them and let them go. You sink a lot of resources and money into them. You equip them. If they die, it's a huge expenditure. You're building up the town to support them. It's really cool. Check out Darkest Dungeon. And it has, I think, one of the best narrations ever. So check it out for sure. And I want to talk about one particular villain in it. There's a monster called the Collector. And I misunderstood how the Collector worked. And it caused me to kind of create another monster, which I want to kind of create. And I'm going to kind of do so with you. And maybe I'll stat it up later or even do that on another show, talk about what I did. But the collector is this skull in kind of a cage. Like the skull is like in a cage helmet, and it has this big yellow cloak on it. Apparently the Yellow King was a big inspiration on it. And I'll have, there's a Darkest Dungeon game wiki, and I'll put a link to the collector so you can see what I mean. And the collector basically does this move called Collect Call, where it brings out the spirits of these adventurers. And I thought, because there's actually a grave in Darkest Dungeon, there's actually a graveyard of your people who have died. And I thought that the collector was bringing out people from your graveyard, and he's not. But that's a cool villain. I like that idea of all of your adventurers being buried in one place and there being some kind of almost like a leech or something sucking away the negative energy from them and causing them to be utilized by some sort of, by the leech, which manifests in our world as this creature that brings out the adventuring party's ghosts and attacks you with them. I love that idea. And I love the fact that you might have to like dig into your own your adventurer's graveyard and find this transdimensional bloodsucker, right? That's eating away at the energy that you create by going adventuring and by dying adventuring and by dying with things undone, right? And perhaps, the cool thing about, like, in a video game, it just does what it does. But at the tabletop, we can have something where this monster, because it's eating away at things that were left undone by the characters, it can start to go after things that the characters wanted and that were important to them. But in a twisted, messed up, misunderstanding, undead way. And I like that idea. Really, the inspiration from this is a misunderstanding of how the monster worked, and then thinking about how would I do this in tabletop, and how I would do it is I would have this monster bringing people back, so that once you have enough dead characters who have things undone, have them start to go after those things and have like a headless horseman type of party going out, dealing with these things that were left undone in the character's backstory or that the characters, in the character's ambitions, but in a twisted, messed up way, and making a mess of the world instead of doing what was good, what the players wanted to do, that was ultimately kind of ambitious and good and make the world better. And just kind of a fun idea. I like the idea that a graveyard can have this kind of transdimensional leech on it, this kind of parasite, kind of transdimensional parasite that is sucking away at something. And it's kind of a fun idea. So that's it. That's where the inspiration took me this time is the collector, inspired by Darkest Dungeons, and thinking about how I would do that. Not totally Darkest Dungeon out, but just thinking a little bit about how I would bring that to tabletop. That's fun stuff. Fun. And I'll have a link to Darkest Dungeons. I'll have a link to the collector, and I'm going to have my links out right away so I don't have to go back and do them. I realized I did not have a Wednesday reply show. I felt like I didn't quite have enough. I have enough now, so I will have a Wednesday reply show up this Wednesday. And I realize I'm about 24 hours late on my Sunday show, and that's because of Martin Luther King Jr. and the way that my weekend shook out. I apologize for the lateness. I will try to be more dead on, and if I'm going to be late, I'll say, hey, it's a 3-day weekend next weekend. It'll come out Monday night instead of Sunday night. So I'll try to keep an eye on that, keep an eye on the calendar. But it's here, it's out. My email, if you want to let me know any monsters from video games that you brought to the table, or if you want to talk about your Darkest Dungeons characters, let me know, or anything that's going on in your video gaming. It's judd.karlman@gmail.com. My Twitter will also be at the end, so you can tweet at me. And I hope you're staying warm. The Northeast is blanketed and cold. My family upstate is freezing, and me and Pupper Cat are staying pretty warm in the city, but it's still pretty cold. Still definitely galoshes and thick socks types of weather. I'm glad I have a beard. I'm glad I've got a hat. We're rocking out here, and I hope you're staying warm, and I hope your gaming is going well. And more on that later. I'll talk to you all on Wednesday for the reply show, and I'll see you all in 6 days on Sunday. Okay? Have a good one, folks.